This is the third day of this April 1981 7-day sesshin. And today we will continue first with the koan between Nansen and Joshu. Ordinary mind is the way, and then read and talk about sayings of Joshu. For this we will use The Golden Age of Zen by John Wu and Radical Zen, translated with a commentary by Joel Hoffman. But before starting with that, let's say a few general things about judgment. Maybe there's no one here to whom it does not apply. But not everybody brings it up, but many people do bring it up, time and time again. First of all, judging oneself as doing well or not doing well, having to do better, comparing oneself with others who seem to be doing better or worse. This inner compulsion to live up to standards. And then this feeling sitting there, one's back turned toward the aisle, being judged by whoever comes by. Does one realize, is one aware what an incredibly strong habit this is? Since the day we were born, we were judged, compared, inculcated, grossly or subtly. Our parents, whether they were aware of it or not, wanted it or not, had their ideas of what we would be like or should be like. And this imparted itself to us, consciously or unconsciously. Of course, our parents themselves had that implanted into them by their parents, the society they lived in, the class, the culture, the religion, the race, the civilization. It goes back endlessly. These ideas, how one should be and should not be. Is one aware that one is bringing this right into the Zendo? And can one imagine, can one fathom the possibility of sitting here and not being judged at all? If you say, I don't believe it, you don't have to believe it. It's not a matter of belief. Just let it sink in. People report coming into the Doksan room, they're afraid. Afraid of being judged before they even come in. Can one fathom the possibility that there's a teacher who does not judge? Of there just being a human being there, who is you. A human being walking through the Zendo who is you and no one else. maybe there'll be an instant where this judging mind will crumble, and then you will understand. And beware of very quickly building up new judgments. Because the mind is so conditioned to do that. It lives in that. A manjiter coming by, he doesn't know. He works with you. A hit with a Kiyosaku has nothing to do with judgment whatsoever. It's just what it is, a hit with a Kiyosaku. What is it? If you don't call it that, it's moo. Oh, what is it? Is it possible that there be no difference between front and back? The back as open as the front, the eyes in the back, or no eyes, either front or back. And no fear, either front or back. Because fear, too, is moo. What is it? Who is afraid? That's where the work needs to be done, not to externalize it. Joshu was born in 778 AD in northern China. Not much is known about his childhood, but one of the sources indicates that as a child, Joshu loved solitude, and that his parents objected to his becoming a monk. There you have the same story over and over, the parents' wishes for their child. Mostly expressing that which they didn't accomplish themselves. May the child accomplish it, so I may live on in my child. There are other sentiments and things involved. We don't need to go into this. The earliest episode recorded in detail is the first meeting of the 17-year-old Joshu with his master Nansen. Yesterday, what we read, and which we will come back to today, was a few years later. Joshu was already a disciple of Nansen's, but here's his first encounter. Nansen was lying on his bed in his chamber. It's interesting, he didn't scramble right up. No image of a Zen master ought to at least sit up. Sort of straighten the clothes up, the rocks a little bit here. He may not even have worn one. The story doesn't go into that. He saw Joshu coming and asked, "Where have you come from?" Joshu said, "From Suizo." Here the translation says the figure of bliss temple, but a better translation says the temple of the holy image. The temple of the holy image. Nansen asked, "Have you seen the holy image?" And Joshu said, The holy image I haven't seen. A lying Buddha I've seen. He didn't fall into that trap. That wasn't a trap for him. There's no cleverness here. At this, Nansen stood up and asked, "Do you have a master already?" Joshu answered, "I have." Nansen asked, "Who is your master?" And Joshu said, "Although the winter is past its peak, it is still very cold. May I suggest, my master, that you take good care of your body." The commentator says, in this very first record of Joshu's sayings, we can already sense the most powerful trait of Joshu's personality, his abhorrence of the abstract. He's already bringing himself in here, this commentator. How does he know he abhorred the abstract? Maybe it didn't mean a thing to him. It may mean a lot to the commentator. We don't know. It just didn't mean anything. To most of us, particularly raised here in Western civilization, the abstract has a very profound meaning. Being able to deal with the abstract is status. It's identification with something. To be able to manipulate it. Apart from the fact that we live in it without knowing it. So difficult in koan study to come down to the concrete. The mind always slips back into ideas, which are somehow the way we're conditioned simpler to deal with. Whereas the true simplicity lies in the concrete. Well, there's a lying Buddha there, of course. It's still an abstract term, too. He wasn't abhorring it. Have you seen the holy image? No. There's a lying Zen master here, Buddha. He uses the word Buddha. In the long history of Zen, we find no other master who had so little faith in truth and so much faith in man. Well, so much faith in man. Let's stick with that. If the right man preaches the wrong way, says Joshu, if the right man preaches the wrong way, the way will follow the man and become right. The wrong man preaches the right way, the way will follow the man and become wrong. And when asked for his, quote, word, what's your word? Joshu said there's not even half a word. And when he was asked further, Master, but are you not here? He answered, I'm not a word. The right man preaches the wrong way, the way will follow the man and become right. Meaning if there's true understanding, and even if the words falter at times, they will right themselves in the course of time. The understanding is important, not the words. And yet to have all the right words quote of past masters and Buddhas at one's command and not understand. This distorts the mind, not only one's own, but everybody else's. Two sources mention that Joshu had studied very little Buddhism before he joined Nansen, and we find no indication that Joshu ever occupied himself with scholarly work or preached on matters of Buddhist doctrine at any length. He's often shown leaving a gathering of monks who have come to hear his sermon without his uttering a single word, or silencing a monk who steps forward to ask a question. We leave several things out in here. Joshu stayed with Nansen for 40 years. From the dialogues recorded in this book, we can sense that there was a deep understanding between the two. Quite a number of dialogues between Nansen and Joshu. One of the most famous ones, Nansen cutting the cat. Later, Joshu coming home and Nansen reporting the incident to Joshu. Joshu just walking out, putting the shoes on his head. And Nansen saying, if you'd been here, you could have saved the cat. We won't comment on this mundo here today. When Nansen died in 834, Joshu was 57 years old. He stayed in Nansen's monastery for another 3 years. Then at the age of 60, Joshu took a water bottle, a walking stick, and left for 20 years of wandering. Must have been in supreme health. The sources record that upon his departure, Joshu made the following oath. Even if a 7-year-old child, if he's superior to me, even with a 7-year-old child, if he's superior to me, I shall follow him and beg for his teaching. Even with a 100-year-old man, if he's inferior to me, I shall follow him and teach him. The saying has been greatly praised and expanded upon by Dogen. We will not go into this here. We recently had a teisha on this, where Dogen, interestingly enough, says the same thing, but he uses a girl, a 7-year-old girl. In the Golden Age of Zen, it says he was fond of mountains and rivers and was very much at home roaming from one place to another. Several of his friends advised him to settle down with a community of his own. Make something of yourself. You probably get similar advice when you go home. But he had no such desire. Once, as he was visiting Chuyu, the latter said, "A man of your age should try to find a place to settle down and teach." "Where's my abiding place?" Joshu asked. "What?" said his host. "With so many years on your head, you have not even come to know where your permanent home is?" Joshu said, "For 30 years I've roamed freely on horseback. Today, for the first time, I'm kicked by an ass." Back in the Radical Zen book, it says, in those years of wandering, Joshu met with most of the Zen masters of his time. Many of these meetings are recorded in this book. At the age of 80, Joshu finally did settle down in his native village in the province of Jo. Although Joshu repeatedly claimed that he had nothing to teach, monks and laymen, common people and rulers of state came to ask him questions, to listen to his words, or just to watch him. The major part of this book is a record of Joshu's sayings from this last phase of his life. Maybe we'll even read from them tomorrow. It's a treasure chest. From this last phase of his life, which lasted over 40 years, Joshu died at the age of 120. What is Joshu's message? Continues the commentator here. Joshu's message is that there is no message. That the world with all its various things is neither good nor bad, neither holy nor unholy. It is nothing beyond itself. But then he says, I go directly to the core of the matter. What is the core of the matter? Usually, we don't see the core, we see the word, the idea, the memory film. As was said yesterday in a quote from Taoism, from Lao Tzu, it said, as long as there are desires, we only see shells. These desires not being hunger, thirst, need for food, warmth, sustenance so that we survive. We're so much confused. Desire of becoming something, being someone, identified with this or that, possessions, fame, ideas. I go directly to the core of the matter, says Joshu. Repeatedly questioned as to what the core of the matter is, Joshu says it's right in front of the eyes. It's also right in back of the eyes. It is, quote, the oak tree in the front garden, or the red bud in the back garden. The leg of the chair, the scorched kettle. Here's a very famous dialogue between two other people, and then Joshu's comment on it. Joshu was called the ancient Buddha of Joshu. This title was given to him by Sui Feng, a prominent Zen master in southern China. It's not known whether they ever met in person, but on a certain day, a monk who came from the south to visit Joshu, or Chaochu, his Chinese name, related to him the following dialogue between Sui Feng and a disciple of his. The disciple said, "Can you tell me something about the cold spring of the ancient brook?" The cold spring. bubbles forth freely and freshly all the time. Can you tell me something about it? Seifeng, however hard you gaze into it, you cannot see its bottom. The disciple, what happens to the drinker? And Seifeng, he does not drink it with his mouth. At this point, Joshu remarked humorously, he'd been told this thing. Since he doesn't drink it with his mouth, I suppose he does it with his nose. Which really it's not a witty crack. Because eyes, ears, nose, are they all different? Or does one smell with one's eyes and see with one's ears and drink with one's nose as one? The visitor said, "What would you say, Joshu, about the cold spring of the ancient brook?" "It tastes bitter," he replied. "What happens to the drinker?" the visitor further asked. "He dies," said Joshu. Dies to the idea of the spring, of the drinking, and of the drinker. When Seifeng heard of this dialogue, he burst into praise, saying, the ancient Buddha. This is how the title originated. It's an interesting tradition in Zen of Zen masters praising each other, either directly or indirectly, by sounding abusive. There's always this praising each other. It's an interesting tradition. Greatly impressed by his wisdom, once a Confucian scholar came to visit and exclaimed, "Your reverence is indeed the ancient Buddha." He immediately returned the compliment by saying, "But you are the new Tathagata." Tathagata also means Buddha, but it also means he who is thus. He who has thus come with all kinds of ideas about ancient Buddhas. On a leisurely summer day, Joshuau was sitting idly in his room with his fellow disciple Wen-Yuan attending on him. By a fluke, a bright idea came to the head of the jolly old man. "Wen-Yuan," he said, "let us enter into a contest." Oh, there's to be a little competition there. It's not so Western as we think. As to which of us can identify himself with the lowest thing in the scale of human values. It was agreed that the winner was to pay the loser a cake. Carob covered, not chocolate. Wen-Yuan gladly accepted the challenge, but deferred to the master to start. Joshu began, I am an ass. Wen Yuan, I'm the ass's buttock, means the rear end, for the benefit of the foreigners here. It's really difficult. When you don't speak this language, you only get half of it. So one must be careful to speak clearly, so everybody can understand as much as possible. Joshu said, I am the ass's feces. That means excrement. Wen Yuan said, I'm a worm in the excrement. At this point, Joshuau asked, what are you doing there? Great flexibility. Wen Yuan replied, I'm spending my summer vacation. Thereupon Joshu said, you win, and he demanded the cake. Once a monk asked him, what is the one motto of this monastery of Joshu? Master replied, there is not even half a motto here. Don't we have your reverence here as the abbot? The monk queried. But this old monk is not a motto, replied Joshu. No theme, no red thread running through it, no holy image. Once Joshu declared, thousands upon thousands of people are only seekers after Buddha, but not a single one is a true man of Tao, of the way. Before the existence of the world, the self-nature is. After the destruction of the world, the self-nature remains intact. Now that you've seen this old monk, you're no longer someone else, but a master of yourself. What's the use of seeking another in the exterior? The question is, has one seen that old monk? Not in the exterior, but breathing the same air. There being no two. On another occasion, Joshu said, the one word which I dislike to hear is Buddha. Joshu did not found a house of his own. He was too much of a freelancer to be interested in being an ancestor of brilliant descendants, bearing his image and continuing his lineage. But all the 5 houses of Zen, these are the 5 outstanding traditional schools, have drawn upon the ancient Buddha of Joshu as their common source of inspiration and wisdom. A new arrival said apologetically to the master, a new arrival, a new monk, coming there for the first time. I don't know whether he said it apologetically or not. He said to the master, I've come here empty-handed. Lay it down then, said the master. Since I've brought nothing with me, what can I lay down? Asked the visitor. Then go on carrying it, said the master. Can become a burden, this idea of having nothing and being nothing. If it is an idea, if it isn't the truth of one's life. When a monk asked, "What is the abbot's family tradition?" the abbot replied, "I have nothing inside and I seek for nothing outside." When a beggar comes, what shall we give him? Joshu replied, "He is lacking in nothing." Which does not mean that you don't give him food or a place to sleep. Or medical attention if he's sick. A monk besought him to tell him the most vitally important principle of Zen. The master excused himself by saying, "I must now go to make water." Means I've got to go to the bathroom. Think even such a trifling thing I have to do in person. One person once said, I think it was in the last session, for the first time the ears were open. And to hear that water in the bathroom was an amazing thing. Never heard it before. Joshu asked Nansen, "The way, what is it?" And Nansen said, "It's everyday mind." Ordinary mind. You got to step into this Joshua already here, not just listen to these words. He's traveled from northern China to southern China to ask this question, what is the way? Meaning. What is the meaning of living and of dying? Is there something permanent in the midst of all this impermanency? Is there such a thing as truth? Is there anything apart from this daily drudgery? From this incredible human misery and sorrow since time immemorial? Is there? What is the truth of myself? Beyond all the ideas I have of myself. What is the way? I've come here. My feet are sore. I got blisters all over. Can you tell me? You're a renowned master. Please tell me. Shed some light on this. I need to know. I'm quite desperate, you know. Ordinary mind is the way. And Joshu, then should we direct ourselves toward it, or should we aim at this? Here it says one should then aim at this, shouldn't one? What he's doing is looking inside, because that's what he's doing. He's aiming at it. There's already an idea of the way, some goal. There must be something, and I'm aiming at it. That's right, isn't it? All my energies are aiming at this goal, which I've already conceived of. Or else I couldn't ask this question. And Nansen says the moment you aim at anything, you've already missed it. Joshu, in the process of aiming and seeing this aiming. And then he's told, the moment you're aiming at something, you've already missed it. And Joshu's listening. He hasn't come all the way to resist anything. Or to argue. If I don't aim at it, how can I know the way? The aiming is gone. It's not there anymore. It's been wiped away. So how do I know the way? And Nansen, the way has nothing to do with knowing or not knowing. Knowing is perceiving but blindly, meaning here, knowing is ideas of the way and how I ought to work and how I ought not to work. Not knowing is just blankness. Mind you here, what Nansen is referring to is also an idea, the idea of not knowing. Some of you say, I don't really know what you mean by not knowing. As long as you don't understand and work in that, you still have the idea of not knowing. That can also be an idea. Not knowing means no idea. No aiming, no expecting, no directing. And Nansen continues, if you've already reached the unaimed at way, you could say the way of no direction. It is like space, absolutely clear and void. Another translation says vast, meaning no obstacles, no limits, no barriers. How then can there be right and wrong in the Tao? At that instant, Joshu was awakened to the profound meaning. Sometimes people say, well, if I'm not to try, not to aim, not to direct myself, well then, What is there? Then I have nothing to do anymore. That's another idea. Not aiming, not directing, means incredible energies are gathered, which usually go into that. Into questioning. This thing would have never come to pass if Joshu hadn't been propelled by a question. What is truth? What is Tao? What is the way? What is Mu? Or what am I? Or who am I? Or what is it? Can one work in this in a completely new way? No judgments, inside or out. No expectations. No preconceived goals. One eye on the moon, the other eye on the goal. That's working cross-eyed. It's not possible to work that way. And you're divided. And you wonder why you're drained. Without direction, yet with great intensity and great yearning. Not knowing. Let's close with this one. The official say asked, "Can even a great master go to hell?" Joshu said, "I lead the way." Say said, "But why should an excellent master of all people go to hell?" And Joshu said, "If I don't go, how can I meet you there?" We will end here for today. The Four Vows.
beings without number.
I vow to liberate endless blind passions. I vow to uproot Dharma gates beyond measure. I vow to penetrate the great way of a Buddha. I vow to attain all beings without number. I vow to liberate endless blind passions. I vow to uproot Dharma gates beyond measure. I vow to penetrate the great way of a Buddha. I vow to attain all beings without number. I vow to liberate endless blind passions. I vow to uproot Dharma gates beyond measure. I vow to penetrate